Most of us walked. We didn't have bus fare or nothing.
And we walked from Benevolent Street all the way down Brook Street to Holy Rosary Church. My mother and 9 children, every single Sunday, we walked to church, and we looked like ducks.
Very few cars. We had the old trolleys with they used to run by electric wires. That's one thing we used to do, because they had the bar that used to go up, used to connect to the overhead electric so that the trolleys could go. And we'd run behind the trolleys and pull the thing off, and it would shut the trolley right off, and the conductor would have to come up and put it back.
I liked the job as a trolley car conductor, and you felt like a railroad man, You wore the long coat and all the pockets in it for transfers, and you stood up there talking, and it was fun.
The trolley was the main source of transportation. The trolley tracks came from East Providence, went down Wickenden Street. When I was a kid, 4th of July, they used to throw gasoline down the tracks and set it on fire and come all the way down. I always remember that, watching it as a kid.
There was many good memories of the annual 4th of July bonfires where they would pour kerosene down the old trolley tracks. That was Wickenden Street. It was all cobblestone and trolley tracks. And they'd pour the kerosene down there, and everybody, that was the time you'd clean your cellar out of all the stuff you didn't want anymore, and everybody, it was the biggest bonfire, and it was a lot of, it was entertainment, a little thing like that.
Wickenden Street was all cobblestone, and when they removed the cobblestone, they left a deep hole in the street. The entire street was now, 4 feet below the sidewalk, and as kids, that seemed like the abyss. That part I do recall. There were also trolley cars that went up and down. The removal of the cobblestones and the removal of the tracks happened at the same time.
They had to dig up all the cobblestones, and people were coming with wheelbarrows and taking the cobblestones back home. The house across the street has a little shrine to our Blessed Mother, but it's made from cobblestones. That was Mr. Vizino. He was Portuguese and very handy with his hands, and he did that from the cobblestones from Wickenden Street.
The Boys Club is the heart of Fox Point. The Boys Club was actually down here on South Main Street at the corner of Power and South Main. And it was the oldest boys club in the country, and they tore it down. It goes to show you how people can do what they want if they got money.
Most social life we had was the boys club, the Fox Point Boys Club, which was located at 226 South Main Street. They had a swimming pool, arts and crafts, a gymnasium, and that's where we spent most of our time.
Keep in mind that we, for the most part, went to the same places all the time. You either went to the boys' club or you went to the park.
I learned how to swim. It was compulsory. You had to learn how to swim. I was exposed to basic electricity classes they had there. They had a basket weaving in the arts and crafts, and I made a basket that I was pretty proud of. Then they had the gymnasium. We boxed, played basketball, and my greatest activity, I liked swimming all the time. I really look forward to swimming, which was good because in terms of personal hygiene, we had showers there, hot water, which we didn't have at home.
This is what you did. You were never around the street because you were so busy into these sports programs. Today, they don't have those things. If you look at boys' clubs today, they have nothing for the kids to do. Nothing. They're out in the street. You got to get those kids out of the street. And if they're not in the boys' club or something like that, they're going to be in these gangs. And it scares the hell out of me.
This was a neighborhood that appreciated boys. They have a boys' club over here in Fox Point. And all the boys belonged to that club, but they had nothing for girls.
I'm a 68-year-old man, and I cannot tell you what my sisters did with their spare time. The girls hung with the girls, the guys hung. And I'm ashamed to say that. 68 years old, and I asked my sister, well, what in the world did you... I'm telling you, my whole life is based around that club. And I never knew what my sister did in her life. But I know, like anything else, women did things that women did. Men did kind of chauvinistic view of today, but that's the way it was.
The only thing we ever did with the partners with the boys' club was Wednesday afternoon, And Saturday mornings, the boys' club was open to the girls. And we used to go swimming there.
Girls were not allowed in the boys' club, except to go to the pool, and it was girls only.
Well, they'd have swim lessons. Yeah, and we went to the boys' club. But to this day, I don't know why, I still can't swim. But yeah, see, bringing back memories, we did. We'd take swim lessons at the boys' club, the girls.
I took the life-saving lessons there. So we went every Wednesday. I'd give us something like a quarter for an hour. And after you have an hour in the pool, and then you have the good shower and everything when you came out. And every summer we went like that. And we mostly went Saturday mornings too.
The Fox Point Library, they're really friendly over there, and I feel like they're so welcoming to everybody. That really makes me like more than where I grew up. Kind of gives you that small town neighborhood feel, because they know you by name. They don't ask you to pull your library card out, and they know my kids, and so that's a place we like to go.
And stay there till 9, reading a book. Then I'd take the book home. Sometime my father'd get up in the morning for work, and I'd still be reading the book. Yeah, man, I love to read.
I had a very boring childhood. My mother was very strict. Because I wasn't allowed to do a lot, I think I fell in love with the library on Hope Street. My parents never owned a car, but you could walk to everything. You could walk to church, you could walk to school, you could walk to the library. And so I'd go there, and I'd get a book, and I'd take it home, and I was someplace else totally. And that's what kind of created that love of books for me.
I love working in Fox Point. The Fox Point became like my second home, because people knew I was working there, and they'd stop in to see me all the time. We were a busy little library. I started the Cape Verdean collection at Fox Point because actually there were very little books on Cape Verde. So the collection was made up of books in English, in Portuguese, and a few in Creole. There were children who were looking for books for homework assignments. There were people in the health industries who were beginning to notice all these Cape Verdean immigrants coming in. They wanted to know something about the culture. There were lots of reasons why people were coming in and looking for books on Cape Verde. So it was really nice that I was there and I could help them a little bit with the books. Because even the books that were in Portuguese, people like to come and look at the pictures.
But I was determined to get my GED, so during the day I would go to the Fox Point Library, where they had two librarians back then, Mrs. Pacheco and Alice. So I explained the situation, and she said, okay, I'm going to help you get your GED. It took me 6 years, but they helped me and I got it. I was already married and pregnant with my first child. I was very, very proud when I got my GED. Major accomplishment.
And I still go to the library there in the Fox Point, even though the Rochambeau Library on the east side is closer. I always go to Fox Point Library. That's my library. Okay. So my son was he got his library card 2 weeks after he was born. He was the youngest person to ever get a library card. And the only person who beat him was my daughter, because she got hers when she was still in the hospital. She was 2 days old. So they're the youngest people to get library cards at the thing. And they still use them. We still go down there all the time and get books.
This area here had 3 schools. Before Fox Point, before 1954, they had 3 little schools. Now where the park is, that was Arnold Street School. Then on Thayer Street, and then was Ive Street School.
They wanted you to go to school. They wanted you to get an education. They wanted you to have a better life than they had. Unfortunately, I don't think the school system agreed with it. I can remember in junior high school at Nathan Bishop, there was a guidance counselor named Mrs. Carroll. I remember I wanted to take a language, and I wanted to take algebra. And it's her bluntly telling me, you can't take that because you're not going to college.
They never thought that we could go up the ladder. Because there was, even in my time in the 40s, there was very few opportunities for blacks.
Well, I remember before it opened in September, and they referred to it as the Millionaire School. Fox Point Elementary School was just a beautiful, beautiful school, state of the art. Unlike a lot of schools, even today,
We were the first school to have a bilingual program in this state. The program worked, it was this way. You had a first grade English, you had a first grade Portuguese. And those two teachers, we would work together. A certain time of the day, the Portuguese people would come, the children would come to the English class, and the English children would go to the Portuguese. They were learning Portuguese.
So when I graduated, I actually started subbing here for a couple of weeks, got a permanent job in Central Falls, and then had an opportunity to come to this school. It was just like really rare, odd actually. And I said I would only come to this school if it was grade 2 bilingual Portuguese education. And the next day they said, how would you like a job, grade 2 bilingual education? I go, oh, all right.
The school was the best. The teachers were excellent. They were just so patient with us. It was amazing. They'd take you aside, and they were very maternal, and they spent so much time with you.
I remember Mr. Sorum. Mr. Sorum was the only male teacher at Fox Point Elementary School. And he was very into nature. He taught me the names of all the different kinds of shrubs that were in the courtyard at Fox Point School. He taught me about the birds, and he had bird feeders out there, and wildflowers and weeds and insects, and I learned a lot from him.
I went to Fox Point School, and my daughter went to both of my children, my son and my daughter, went to Fox Point School. And when I brought her to the first day of school, her kindergarten teacher was my brother's kindergarten teacher. I was like, "Wow, Mrs. Alves, you're still here?" And my 4th grade teacher was still there.
At the end there, I was teaching a lot of kids that I had the parents when they were kids.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, you had my mother, you had my father, and then that day I knew it was time to retire when they started saying, you had my grandmother. When they started saying that, I said, I think it's time to hang it up.
I remember India Point Park as a scrapyard with old hulks of ships. Today, of course, it's quite beautiful.
India Point, there used to be all houses down in here. The big boats would come in the scrap line. You couldn't swim over there because the magnets that pick up the scrap, sometimes they drop stuff in that water, forget it. But I had a few of the guys, they had a big ship down there. I think it was 3 or 4 decks on that thing, and that was high. They go up there and dive off there.
That was a major port, and things were railed out on trains all up and down the Northeast Corridor. So when it became no longer used that way, it was left as fallow, and when the power lines went up, there was just the spaghetti kind of across the sky, and slowly it became a place where people would sell and buy drugs, and it also was toxic. It was polluted, so it needed to be, in order to be public space, it needed to be cleaned up or capped or rehabilitated.
In the late 60s and early 70s, India Point Park was being created for a city that historically was a seaport and grew out of the trade that came up Narragansett Bay. India Point Park gives us an opportunity to look back and look out onto the water and get onto the water.
But when I moved over here, I started kind of going down to parks around to see what kind of views there were to paint. One time I was painting, and the little Portuguese ladies who were dressed in black were coming by me, and I never know what to expect people to say because I have this big canvas stretched out on the ground in front of me, and you can hardly even see what it is. But this woman came over and said, "It's beautiful," and she like kissed me. And I thought, oh, it was really amazing. And then I remembered a spot that I had just come upon a few years before, which was the pedestrian walkway that went into India Point Park. It was just an amazing spot for me. It had a view looking over Narragansett Bay. The light in the morning is spectacular, and the light at sunset was spectacular because you had this whole panorama, and you could see the way the light would fall over this whole landscape. You could just get a view of everything because you were high over the landscape. So I started painting there, and I painted there for 23 years.
So many things have changed. Wickenden Street is completely different, but through my own eyes, I still see that old neighborhood with the old people that lived there and the push carts and the neighborhood stores. That's still what I see when I look at it.
It was just neighborhoody. There was a vegetable cart, and it was pushed by an elderly gentleman, John the Banana Man. And you could hear him coming every afternoon. I don't think he spoke English, other than he knew the names of the fruits and vegetables, because you could hear his cry, and his cry was, "Where bananas?" And they were like 5 cents for a bunch of them. You could get great fresh fruit from him, great fresh vegetables right off the cart.
There used to be an ice house, because I remember getting ice when I was a kid. The ice you get for 25 cents would be twice as big as the one you would get off the Iceman. My family found out it was cheaper to go to the ice house in the summertime, because you had to go quite often in the summertime. And I remember going down and get ice, and I used to bring paper and put it on top of the ice so it wouldn't melt us coming home, because it'd be hot. And we used to put it in an ice box.
Near the corner of Brook and Wickenden was a small variety store operated by a blind man named Joe. He could pick up any bill and tell you whether it was a 20, a 10, a 5, or a 1. And he would demonstrate that to people. And it was amazing. He also knew if you picked up something in his store. He would say, "What do you got? What do you got in your hand?" And he'd say, "Nothing." "Yes, you do. What do you got in your hand?" And we'd laugh. We weren't thieves as kids. We were more interested in Joe's abilities.
Across from Fox Point Elementary School was a great little penny candy store called Celia's. Most of us would save our pennies because we would go after school, we would go over to Celia's. And Celia's had a gumball machine. And you could get, if you put your penny in there and you got a little spotted gumball, that was a 10-cent winner. So she would give you 10 cents. If you got one with a swirl around it, that was a nickel winner, so you got a nickel. So I guess that was the first casino here in Providence.
I used to run all around this neighborhood. I loved this area, and I used to have to be home at a certain time. I used to race. Sometimes I walked home with the kids in a sensible way, but sometimes I used to run up to Brown to walk through the campus. Oh, the guys were so cute, and I used to.
You know, it was a whole different world. They lived in a different world. Not very many Brown Fox Pointers ever thought they would ever go to Brown. That was an anomaly for a Fox Pointer to go to Brown.
What Brown University did, they were buying properties in the Fox Point area and housing students in them, expanding. We wanted to maintain a community. And we finally got it across to them that we're not against you expanding, we're against you destroying our community. You need a community. You can't just have college buildings and destroy the living area that we have.
As graduate students at Brown, we were informed that we should not go. I think they did not want us to go south of Power Street. 4 of the graduate students in September of 1969 decided to go explore Wickenden Street, and we were actually told by a bartender that he would not serve us liquor and he wanted us to leave and did not want Brown students in Fox Point.
When we moved here, I think people thought we were really living on the edge of civilization. I mean, when I say people, but our peers and the Brown community, which we really were, we identified a lot with the Brown community in our early years.
I was renovating this restaurant, so then when I was cleaning and renovating, a Brown student knocked on my window, and I think apparently he did some study in Cambodia. He came in, spoke Cambodian, and I was like, wow, that's pretty good. I got good vibes already. And he said he's going to bring his friends here, and that's how it started.
One of the reasons we particularly have liked Fox Point is the diversity over the years of these different ethnic groups and the way they've interacted and combined. Many intermarried. And of course, coming up to the present, the addition of the young people from both RISD and Brown has even added a new layering of really lively, I think, culture to the area.
Brown is good, but I think they did a lot of damage to the neighborhood. They should have allowed people to stay in there. But then again, I blame the natives, the Portuguese and the Irish that lived there. They could get big dollars for their property, they could get good rents, so they raised their rents, and the average Fox Pointer couldn't afford them, so they had to go other places.
There was no shortage of bars on Wickenden Street, between Babe's Bar and Escobar's Bar and Batista's Bar. I think that it was the street with the most bars in the city.
I remember growing up here, it was 13 bar rooms on the street. 13 bars. And my father used to always be one to fight against shutting them bars down. But the famous one is Manny Almeida's. Yeah, that one there, that's where Rocky Marciano used to go there.
Everybody went to bar room at night or after work. Very seldom you went home. My time you went home, but I mean, my father's time. Well, my father didn't go to bar because my mother wasn't allowed. But most men stopped at the bar before they went home.
We all ended up in Three Lantern Bar, all ages. 40, 50, 60, 70-year-old guys, 80-year-old guys. And some of them didn't drink. They just came for the friendship, and hanging around and tell lies. And we'd sit outside. In the summer, we'd find a corner somewhere, buy a bag of crabs, and sit outside and eat crabs.
Well, back in the day, you had a regular crowd that would stop after work. They would probably get there from 4 to 6 or 7, then they would go home to supper, and it was almost an everyday event for some people. Every day you would stop, and then you say, well, I'm not going to do that tomorrow. And then everybody says, what are you doing? Well, let's just go up there for one. And, it was a good meeting place. It was a nice little bar. It had 2 sides to it. It had a front side and a back side. And originally, the back side was the ladies' entrance. Back in the day, the women couldn't go into the front part of the bar. So that's something that has obviously changed throughout the course of history, for the better.
The bars, women were not allowed to go into the bars. Those were just for gentlemen.
Today, that bar has been changed over. It doesn't even look like a bar. You can just walk in there and have a drink. Where in the 70s, women were not allowed to go in bars. But today, you can just walk in there, have a drink, and walk back out. And it's so different. Everything has changed so much.
So many of the people coming to this country, they came to addresses on Wickenden Street and Sheldon Street. So this was really one of the first areas that Cape Verdeans came to when they came to America. The Sheldon Street Church was the first Protestant Cape Verdean church in this country.
We've always been members of Sheldon Street congregation. And my mother and father, a lot of the Cape Verdeans, they went to the Sheldon, which was a Cape Verdean church. When I got married with my second wife, we got married in our backyard on Wickenden Street. Minister from Sheldon Street was the one that, married us and everything.
They went to that church their entire lives. My father and uncle grew up to be deacons in the church. My uncle played piano for them. He was an incredible pianist. That church was a strong community because they had so many events all year long, and they had breakfasts, and they had woodworking shop. They had various things that kept the children involved and the families involved, and sewing classes. When it first started, actually, the man who ran it at first tried to find jobs for people and teach people how to English and all kinds of stuff.
Our church was always full in the summer because the kids didn't have anywhere else to go.
Was a real cornerstone for we kids. Look, we kids that weren't Catholic, and we all attended Union Baptist. At some point, when Union Baptist was closed down, the people that frequented Union Baptist moved into the Sheldon Street Church, and my mother eventually became the minister there. She had every seat in that place at Sheldon Street filled. Not only that, there were microphones outside, and people would actually come and sit outside because they couldn't get in and listen to her preach. She was 80 years old at the time. Then she retired.
Always liked church. I get a good feel. I still do. Get a good feeling coming out. I go in the church pissed off, and I come out, I feel better.
That's a strong presence there in the neighborhood, even though most of the people who go to the church don't even live in the neighborhood anymore.
It was the base for most Cape Verdeans in Fox Point, this church here. But over the years, it's changed. They've died off. They've moved. A lot of the children and the grandchildren who grew up in this church didn't follow in the footsteps of their parents and their grandparents as far as religion's concerned. Sense of community that we had, that's gone. There's not many Cape Verdeans that even live in Fox Point anymore. This is the closest I come to Fox Point now, when I come to church and when I'm involved in the church. If this church wasn't here, I probably wouldn't even come down here anymore.
With the nuns at Holy Rosary Church, which was the Portuguese church, we would go on Saturday and the nuns would teach us embroidery. And I'm talking, some of the girls did beautiful embroidery with silk thread and everything, you know. So that was something that we girls did. The girls were very protected. Where the boys could roam just about anywhere, girls had parameters. You know, you could only go up to this street or that street.
And in the summer, the nuns had sewing school, and we'd go there Thursday, Friday, and Saturday mornings, and that kept us off the street. And the nuns were teaching us how to be little ladies and how to sew. And yeah, oh yeah, because I talked and fooled a lot. I had to sit near the nun because I was always talking. They wanted you to get a shorter thread. I'd do a big long one, so I wouldn't have to do it twice. But they were teaching us. I got good. I learned to read there too. Not all of the parents paid extra for that. I learned to read and write in Portuguese.
And I used to write to my mom all the time, because my mom, she couldn't read English. I had to write in Portuguese too. I got to write Portuguese. I went to the nun's house too, and I used to go there for sewing, like, you know, embroidery. And then we used to have classes after the embroidery, have classes there with the nuns, and they taught us how to read and write Portuguese. I used to do sewing first, embroidery. I got quite a few things I did there. 1 hour from 11 to 12, go into this room where they had the table and chairs and the books and all that. Learn how to read, write Portuguese. My sisters never went. I went because they didn't know how to embroider. You know, the oldest one gets it all, right? And then we used to, once in a while, put things, you know. And wasn't that, you know, we had that much. My poor daddy was the only one working. Once in a while, Mom would say, you take this bag of sugar and give it to the sisters. Because put things, they appreciate that, because the church got to supply them with stuff for the kitchen, for the cooking and all that. And that's the way we lived, honest to God.
But at the Portuguese church, on the weekend, on Saturday, they had embroidery classes for the girls. And then if you belonged to any of the, not clubs, but associations at the church, like the choir, they would break down and like have bowling clubs and picnics and just get together. That's about it for the girls. No, there wasn't any too much for us.
The 38 hurricane, we didn't even know what was going on. You didn't have the news like you have now. All we know is we were going home from school and it was very windy. And Evelyn and I are walking with our books down Wickenden Street. We get down to this market there, and we're waiting for the bus. Bus comes. It's crowded. So I said, oh, that's too crowded. We'll get the next bus. This man got the two of us and shoved us in there. The driver closed the door. He said, go. There's no more buses. The water was already coming in. There was no more buses, and we started out. I didn't feel bad or really notice it until we didn't see South Water Street, what they call, that wasn't the throughway. That was just a little street. We were up here on South Main Street going, and as we went around and I saw the water coming to the convent where the nuns were, that's when I got upset. I said, oh my God, I got home and told my mother. Until the next day, and we all, my mother and the landlady and the kids, we all walked down South Main Street to see the destruction. It was terrible, devastating. We went to the Point Street Bridge, boats on top of boats, a barge on top of the bridge. It was awful, awful, awful. That was one of the worst things. I wouldn't want to live through that again. It was terrible. But there again, what could you do?
Oh, it affected it pretty much because a lot of our streets is all flooded out. Where I lived on the bottom of Transit Street, well, the water came up almost to where our house was, but South Main and Wickenden Street was all flooded. South Water Street, matter of fact, we had the docks right there, and a few of the guys that used to drink, they used to sleep down at the docks. A few of them got killed, they were sleeping when the hurricane hit, they didn't know, they got drowned and everything. But that caused a lot of damage.
I remember waking up one morning, I said, boy, on Transit Street, it was awful windy. I opened the door and whew, there goes a shingle. I said, what is this? I said, you were sleeping through the hurricane and the water was halfway up the street, up the hill. I said, oh, I went back to bed.
See, the people that lived in Barrington, places like that, they all had boats, They was what we call the well-to-do, and the hurricane, a lot of the boats broke loose and they came down where we live in Fox Point. So all the kids, we spotted the boats and we'd go and grab a boat. So we each owned a boat for about a week, till the cops came and took them because they was looking for the boats, the people from Barrington and places like that.
We lost things in Fox Point we should have never lost. We lost Top Wharton Park, a beautiful park. They built a school there. My personal opinion is it would have never happened in another community. Most Fox Pointers, I think, moved to East Providence and all over the state and all over the country. But it was sad, and it really pains me when I go through Fox Point now. When I was young, I could walk through Fox Point. It would take me 3 hours saying hello to everybody. Now I walk through at times and there's not one person that I know that I grew up with.
We lived across the street, across on Brook Street, but that house is gone too. That house is gone. And we used to see all those people on those the long porches. Oh my God, that's all gone. And there was a bakery there, that's gone. The gas station is gone. And and as I look at something around here, I say, you know what, we're gonna forget all about this. They're knocking everything down now around here. And we're gonna forget all about that. I say, oh my God, what was here? Oh, you remember it was this, that? Oh, that's right. They're changing all along Fox Point. So people that have left Fox Point, we don't want to be in Fox Point, we're going to go to East Providence. Hey, fine. So now they say, oh, I wish I had never sold my house in Fox Point because now we can't even afford to buy a house there. Can't afford to buy it. And Wickenden Street was like, it was all right, years ago. We said, oh, Fox Point. But now Fox Point is getting up there.
I am not excited about what's happening in Fox Point because I'm from the old school and I never use any of the shops on Wickenden Street because I don't like the changes. But I know change has to happen and I go with it, but doesn't mean I have to use there's nothing that I want anyway. There's nothing that I can't think of anything on Wickenden Street that, I think I did use the hairdresser one time on the corner of Hope, and I think I went there one time. But other than that, nothing, no.
There's really not many places for us to go. At one time, we had pool rooms, and we had clubs, and we had even bars, there was bars, and there was always, around here, there was always places to go. All of that is gone. And all these businesses you see up and down, and we go way down to Old Stone Bank and Hemingway's and down there, that was all Cape Verdeans and all them streets in there. Gone. changed, right?